show sport is concerned, this is really, really key for this story. So exploring things like color blocking, contrast color stitching, reflective taping, and also a lot of kind of 80s and 90s branding, which we'll get to in a little bit. Now, I mentioned workwear. Again, instead of this being a very vintage inspired workwear story, all of these stories are much more 80s or 90s inspired. So the workwear is very much about bellows pockets and patch pockets, practical looks, and very sort of 90s inspired. We're also seeing a bit of cargo in this story as well. So this playful utility story is all about high color utility. So I particularly like the Prada image in the center here, where they've taken inspiration from a workwear jacket and reimagined it in this amazing white leather with the sort of bright yellow shearling lining. And then we have the salopette. So the salopette is very much the move on from the bib and brace overalls that we've been seeing in recent seasons. Again, because this is a sort of deep winter outdoors story, we're looking at inspiration from all-weather skiing, snowboarding, very kind of chalet style. And again, that sort of 90s and noughties attitude as well. Fabric blocking is really important in here because it gives it that 80s sort of fabric block and color block inspiration. So mixing up things like perhaps pinstripe or railroad or plaid with plain, looking at textured weaves here. I also love the example here of Levi's Made and Crafted, where they've taken a denim jacket and fused it with this amazing cable knit sweater at the top there. And then practical pockets. I mentioned earlier we have all the workwear pockets. We are also exploring on here extreme cargo, bellows pockets, multiple pockets, loving this sort of very sort of practical outdoorsy vibe about it. Very kind of dad inspired. And then I wanted to touch on vintage in here. I love the idea of mixing old and new. So mixing raw edges or faded and destroyed workwear with sportswear looks. So like bright colors, or perhaps even mixing natural and man-made. So cotton with nylon on the same garment. So loving those ideas, keeping it kind of very raw and very destroyed, but also very clean. Because this is a deep winter story, I've looked at extreme layering here. The recent Balenciaga runway was perfect because it was really inspired by this sort of dad dressing with plaids and quilted denim jackets all layered on top of each other. Funnily enough, It's May Memes, who I mentioned at the very beginning, took inspiration from this and created this image in the middle, which is a funny, over-the-top take that's been photoshopped of the Balenciaga campaign, which is really funny. And then all weather is important. So taking inspiration from parka silhouettes and outerwear and reworking in denim, and loving all of the sort of top stitching, the practical pockets, the practical zip throughs, the tabs and the D-rings and all of that stuff to make it really technical looking. And then polar fleece is really important in this story. Loving all these sort of super cozy looks. So mixing denim with polar fleece in the same garment. Capital are a really good brand to watch as far as that stuff is concerned. And also Acne Blaconst, who I mentioned earlier. And then moving on from fleece is quilting. Loving all of these extreme puffer looks, down jackets. I especially love Roy Rogers. For the latest Pitti Uomo show, they actually took the idea of the trucker jacket and reworked it. And I'm loving this sort of nylon and cotton quilted trucker jacket in the bottom center there. So as I mentioned earlier, this is a very sort of super extreme outdoors look. So looking at technical fabrics, which we know in the industry are getting more and more important. I have examples here from brands like Radial from Japan and Fundamental from Japan, and also Capital, and examples here of coated fabric from Collect. So looking at coatings or waxed fabrics or taped seam details and all of that stuff. And then naive branding I thought was really important in here. I especially love there's this collaboration between Kith and Bugaboo, and this cap in the bottom right just reminds me of the sort of cap that you would get, your dad would pick up free from a trade show, you know? So it's really middle of the road branding that really looks under-designed and looks quite naive and quite 80s inspired. So I think that's what's really important in this story. Also, logo mania, the next slide, all about more is more. So high color branding and what looks like kind of sponsorship branding. So, you know, multiple logos in one garment, being inspired by motocross or by cycling as well. And then as far as print and pattern is concerned,